And so we just watched the agent do it, and it did exactly what a person would do really interesting work for us and remove tedium from our lives. I just think that's really exciting, that the world is really changing. Is it AGI? I don't know, I don't think so. Dystopian societies are always fun and entertaining.
Thank you very much for joining me for the interview. It's an inference podcast for Turing Post. Let me just start with a big question right away. When will we trust AI enough to run our businesses, to run our companies?
So already we see just tremendous impact from AI across so many of our customers. And so there are lots of places where people are using AI everywhere, from customer support systems to developers using it to write code. And, in all of those scenarios, the people are using it generally to make a person more productive, right? Here's a suggestion, here's how you should do your job, here's some help for you. Well, I take your question to mean at what point are we at the place where I don't need that human sort of looking over the shoulder? I think it will depend entirely on the particular scenario that you're looking at. I think already there are some low-risk scenarios where you'll let the AI go and try something, and if it does a poor job, you kind of don't care that much. And there are high-risk scenarios that I think we'll never want to give over to AI, right? And so it's just going to be continually learning where is the place where AI is performing at a level that we feel confident enough to say, all right, I think this task can be handed over.
Where do you think this level of trust will never be achieved?
I mean, you can think about the highest level, medical procedures or places. You could think about people always go to we're not going to let nuclear missiles be launched by AI or anything like that. So there's some places that I think we will just never go to, but I think there's so many more that we're starting to see, hey, AI is actually doing a better job at this. I think it's instructive just to look through the developer lens, right? We've, in just the past couple of years, gone from having AI suggest a completion to you to now we're asking it, go and resolve some issues from my, GitHub backlog with the agent that we announced this morning. Again, you're still going to review that code and sort of make sure that it works, but you've given a lot more responsibility and you've given a lot more tools to the agent to go and do those things, which I think is super interesting progress there.
What is your favorite example from the internal work with agents and just from the client side?
I mean, I think, the internal we call it dog fooding, but just sort of learning how to use the product for the GitHub, software agent. It's just been really pretty amazing for a lot of people. One of the early demos that we did just to sort of see hey, is this even possible, was upgrading a code base from Java 8 to Java 17. And for those who aren't deep in the guts of developing, it's just a mindless, thankless, not fun, and really pretty difficult job, right? You just keep running into another corner and another dead end, and this didn't work. And so we just watched the agent do it, and it did exactly what a person would do. I changed all these APIs. Oh, I compiled it, but now I forgot I need this dependency. So then when I installed some stuff, that pulled these other dependencies, and just kept working through the problem the same way a person would do. And it completed this pretty thankless, pretty unfun task, but still pretty important to do that type of work. And so I think that's a trend we'll actually see a lot of, right? I think about, when I live in the area, when I go to the doctors in the area, they're all using Nuance DAX. And Nuance DAX is a technology that lets a doctor have a conversation with a patient. And Nuance DAX sits unobtrusively and listens and then produces the medical record. And so the doctor's gone from having to type away everything to having a medical record produced while they have a conversation focused on you. And so I think that trend of we're going to have this menial work that people don't want to do, upgrading Java 8 to Java 17, producing the medical record and doing those things are going to be done by AI. We're pretty much at that world today. That's, I think, great improvement.
Thank you. Yeah, AI is very powerful. As we were discussing trust, it's still a bottleneck. But my question is, in your view, is it harder to build trustworthy AI or to convince the stakeholders to trust it?
That's a really hard question. I think you need both sides to sort of work together. We focus a lot on building trustworthy AI, starting all the way from the data that we use to sort of train the models, the way that we train, the way that we post-train the models to follow instructions and to sort of answer questions in a particular way. Then the Azure Content Safety System that we put on top of it that helps give developers the control to sort of make sure that they're going to be able to use it in the right way. And so AI is very good at many things, but then there's the other side of it of as you start to give agency to these models, this is a question that comes up in a lot of AI research areas of if the AI performs and makes mistakes at the same level of humans, is that okay? And it feels like the answer today in many cases is no. We have sort of a higher bar, but I think that'll be something that we have to sort of work to. It's just sort of hard to accept. People make mistakes, people are fallible.
People also hallucinate.
People also hallucinate, right? I ever possibly said something incorrect, right? So yeah, how do you sort of live with AI that has some of those same characteristics? That's a pretty big societal question to work through.
What lessons has Microsoft learned from early enterprise agent deployments? What breaks the trust? What builds it?
We settled on this metaphor of Copilot, and I think that's been a pretty important metaphor. The system, this model that is helping a person perform better. It's sort of looking over the shoulder, looking at the code that you write. It's able to sort of go through, like on Microsoft 365 Copilot, understands your email and your contacts and your documents and the relationships that you have, and is able to answer questions in a better way because of that. And I think that's been a really important metaphor at this first phase of, hey, we're just asking conversations. This next phase as we move into agents, I think is going to start to build different muscles, right? It's going to work differently where you're actually giving more control to an agent to go and perform certain actions and to perform tasks. And so I think, people will work carefully with that to sort of set guardrails on it. Like there's a company that I spoke to that's, it's a two-sided marketplace. And so they use agents to resolve disputes. I say I purchased something, you say I didn't or whatever, and we're arguing about it and they have an agent. And so it's got some thresholds. It can offer refunds up to some certain dollar amount. And it's using its judgment to sort of decide how to balance the two. And so they've given some guardrails to it and some restrictions on it, but they're also starting to open up a bit. Well, how much do we start to let the agent make some of these decisions? And, in their case, potentially some of them are just like, look, it's better to have two happy customers and, an agent can sort of make that happen. But I think those are interesting scenarios to start to see.
Yeah. If we're talking about the new metaphor about Agentic Web, this is the new story that Microsoft announced at Microsoft Build. How would you describe it? What is this story for you, Agentic Web?
I think the Agentic Web is just this recognition that the world is really changing. And so we're moving from a place where most of the time I would go to a search engine, I would look for a web page, I would consume information that way, to a world where now I'm asking AI to do a lot more for you. I think some of the researcher capabilities that we've announced through like M365 Copilot, go and perform some research, look at some stuff in my documents, look at some stuff on the web, and just produce me a report based on that. It just changes the interactions quite a lot and changes the way that we think about what does it mean to be using online, what does it mean to be using the web. And I think people who produce content on the web are going to think about that too. What are the ways that they should be incorporating agents into their websites? And you saw like the NLweb and sort of how we've made that sort of simpler to integrate. Everyone is going to sort of need to just sort of grapple with, hey, we have new technology and things are going to work different. How is that going to show up? In some ways, it's not that different from the emergence of the web, right? Like I remember, in the mid-90s when every commercial all of a sudden on TV said .com, and we laughed about that. And now you don't think it's weird at all. Like, of course I want to go to a website to find out more information about something, so.
Yeah, everything is with AI now.
Right, it'll be the change of like, what do you mean this website doesn't have an AI agent that can help me figure out answer my question immediately? Like that'll seem silly, like they just haven't caught up and updated, so.
Yeah, do you have children?
I do.
There was a lot of conversations and stories about how children use it from Kevin Scott and from the stage day. So what's your strategy with your kids? How do you talk with them about AI? What do they do?
Yes.
I have 5 children and I need to understand how to teach them about it.
I don't know that I have all the answers. I'm definitely not the world's perfect parent, but I think we've done a pretty good job. We have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, 2 boys. They've been comfortable online and comfortable with AI. My favorite line when ChatGPT first launched, my son was like, this is blown up on TikTok faster than anything in my whole life. And I'm just like, on TikTok and your entire life. Yeah, it's the first thing you've seen explode like that. But it was suddenly, something that they got, that they interacted with. And so I think that's been super important. There are a lot of concerns on, well, how's this going to impact education? Will people actually still know how to write? I think the important question is to think of these are new tools. When I was showing my age, when I was in high school, they were very worried about using calculators, right? You have to learn how to do the math, but like now, I wouldn't even, I don't carry a calculator anymore, I carry a phone, but anything hard, I don't write the long division, I just pull out the calculator. And so it'll be the same thing. I have this tool that helps me do things in a better way, and how do I use it? And I think that's going to be the important thing for kids as they're sort of navigating this AI world, and for everyone trying to instruct them with it is, we have new tools and they're very powerful, and you can use them in very powerful and productive ways. You can probably use them in some harmful ways. And so you need to understand those things. And as a parent, I still think the important things of your character and your judgment are the dominant things that we need as a society to work on. But the tools that they have access to, they're going to need to learn how to use.
Everything we talk about now is very practical. What's is AGI in your opinion?
Yeah, so AGI, is a topic people sort of like. It's such a great science fiction topic, and ASI for superhuman intelligence and all those things. And it becomes almost a philosophical conversation with lots of people of like, how do we know that we've actually reached it? Maybe you can, yes, over a nice glass of wine and indulge in a nice conversation about that. I tend to be just much more pragmatically focused of like, we have this AI that's, is it AGI? I don't know. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. It's pretty helpful, though. It's a very useful tool. I really like being able to use it, and so I very much focus on that. There will be, the things that people worry about with AGI in terms of the way that people's jobs change and potential disruption to jobs that come with that. Those are very real concerns, but those are real concerns with the tools that we have today, and they've been very real concerns with, back to the Industrial Revolution, with the invention of the PC, and like the number of jobs that have changed, they change. And that's hard for societies to sort of work through, but they do work through them. And I think that's the thing that, when I think about AGI, I hear the debate really being around, hey, the world as we know it is going to work differently. What does that mean for me? And I think that's the important question for everyone to work through.
Are we close to understanding that, or just more questions?
Well, there's certainly some areas where we've seen, I think it's interesting how developers, programmers are going to be one of the first places to grapple with this, that the role is going to change. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to need to, the ability to sort of remember some arcane API or quickly search for it is less important. The ability to use the AI tool is suddenly much more important. Mm-hmm. It's funny, the calculator analogy, like there's some companies that are interviewing for developers and trying to prevent them from using, AI in the interviews. And I was talking to another company who was like, that's a totally wrong approach. Mm-hmm. They should be using the tool. I want them using the most advanced tools and showing that they're comfortable and fluent in it, because that's where the developer world is moving, and they need to be good at that. And so I think they're going to have to work through, like, how does the developer job change? But being comfortable and fluent with the tools is going to be a key part of that.
So in the last year, how did it change for your team?
So with our team, we use GitHub Copilot extensively. And so the place that we're at now is still developers largely have the same job, but they are faster at doing a lot of some of the menial tasks. I think as we start moving into the agent space, we're just starting to sort of see that shift. Increasingly, it'll start to look like I now have, even a fleet of agents at my disposal to go and get my tasks done, and being effective at getting them to sort of go and do that work, I think will be an important role, but we haven't gotten too far down it. So the main change has been you have to learn, again, how to use Copilot to sort of prompt it to sort of go and do work for you to complete this particular function or what have you. And it makes you more productive if you're good at that. And I think that's been the main change that we've seen.
How long will it take, do you think, for everyone to be more productive, more knowledgeable about agents, and for agents to work properly?
Gosh, that's a hard question to answer. The space has moved really quickly, and I think that's been definitely one of the defining characteristics of AI over the last couple of years is it's moving very fast. So it'll probably be quick, but what is quick 6 months, is quick 5 years. Both of those feel pretty quick to me. I think it's probably going to be more on the order of a couple of years to sort of fully take effect. I think about it this way. If we didn't produce another model, that nothing else ever came out, we have at least 5 years of adoption of the existing tools to sort of fully figure out how we can use them in their best ways. But we keep releasing new models. And so there's going to be so much more development and applicability of things to come.
So you think like from 2 to 5 years? For the infrastructure to
get to a place where people are very frequently using agents in a large portion of their professional life, I think that's probably the right timeline, yeah.
Thank you. So when you think ahead to 5 years, what excites you the most, and what are your concerns?
It's pretty exciting just being able to get these tools to do the types of things that we want them to anyhow, right? Like my son wanted to go backcountry skiing, and I wanted a guide to show us where to go so we didn't die in an avalanche, because I don't know how to do that. What are the guide services? Where can I look them up? Where should we go? What are the different costs? That's just hours of research. Yeah. And I was able to ask an AI agent, go and fill this out and come back with a report, and it did it, and in 5 minutes I had something that, I could have done all this research, but it just kind of gave me, this is a nice synthesized answer. That's just, taking that sort of tedium out of so many aspects of life, I think is just really quite exciting. And so we just see that expanding into so many professional fields, right? Like I talked about doctors, the tedium of having to produce the medical records. My wife's a lawyer, and the tedium of having to go and do document review or research on some of these things, being able to focus then on the interesting part. I want to go back backcountry skiing. I don't want to research how do I go and do it. I think that's really exciting. And so as we start to see more and more places where we can sort of, again, build the right guardrails for these applications to do really interesting work for us and remove tedium from our lives, I just think that's really exciting. You ask about what am I concerned about? This is very powerful technology, and we are constantly working through what are the right guardrails that we need to put on it. And it's a fine balance, right? Some of the tools that we've got, if we just completely unconstrain them, they could do more interesting things, but they also could do some things that we're not comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And so finding that right balance of I'm going to constrain and set the problem up in the right way that it's going to be safe, but still preserve the, wow, that's incredible. I didn't know it could actually do that, right? And so, you see like the GitHub agent trying to walk that line of like, it can sort of go and it can solve issues off of your GitHub backlog and understand the issue and go and test them out and write code and run it and all those things. It can't check it in and deploy it. It still has a person. We've given it some guardrails, and it's very constrained in sort of the environment. It can't email the code out to someone else or anything like that. And so that balance of I still think that's pretty much a wow experience. I can't believe it can do these things, but it's got to sort of keep the right controls on it. I think that's going to be the key thing that we just have to navigate. That's something as Microsoft, as creators of this technology, we take that very seriously. We think it's super important to think through that.
I'm sure. And from the clients, what do you hear from them? What are their questions, concerns?
We certainly hear from a lot of our customers, how am I going to manage this across my enterprise, right? I've got every corner of the enterprise really excited about this. I don't know the rules that I need to put in place, and I want to make sure that I don't leak out information in ways that I'm not supposed to. And so I think some of the work that we announced that probably won't get as much press, but like the integration of, the Entra ID, and so now you can give an ID to each agent, and you can give it, governance and control over what access does it have, and you can really manage that in a centralized way. Those are going to be super important for adoption of it. And so that's certainly a concern that, it's not the exciting and cool technology, it's the and to make stuff work in an enterprise environment, it's hard. Yeah. And so these types of controls and things that Microsoft has spent decades working on, super important to help the companies get that right.
Mm-hmm. That's my last question, and let's switch the gears. I believe that books shape people.
Okay.
So what is the book that you go back to often that helps you? It can be about your job or it can be completely different, but what book shapes you or shaped you?
Wow, that's an interesting question. There's books on sort of how to interact with people I find have been really important. And so there's a book called Crucial Conversations, which is about how to have those hard conversations, right? This is going to be a tough, emotionally charged topic. And, it's one of those books where you're reading it and you're like, this is going to change the way I talk to my wife. This is important information, but just sort of knowing how do I bring up the subject? How do I have that interaction? I think that's a super important skill. And so from a professional life, that's one that certainly I go back to a lot. On the fiction side, I tend to gravitate towards science fiction. And so, it's the high school book. My son just read it, but Brave New World is always a book where you're just dystopian societies are always fun and entertaining, but just sort of thinking about what if society sort of went in a particularly different direction, play these things to a logical conclusion. I tend to like all of those books. So,
Well, the sci-fi, it feels that we ran out of some scenarios. We're at this moment when AI is so powerful that kind of limited our imagination about dystopia.
Most dystopians need some triggering event to ruin the world. There's a lot of the Silo series I just recently read where, people live in vertical nuclear silos buried underground, right? And so most dystopian, something bad has to sort of tear. The Hunger Games is a similar thing. There was a big war and then they set up a really terrible government, right? So there's usually something like that. It's interesting how few of them are, I think, AI focused, I find.
Thank you. I think education will help us from this dystopia. Well, thank you so much for this interview.
Yeah, it was great to talk with you. And I hope you have a great rest of your build.
Thank you.
There's no audience here to applause.